back then it was a very, very important crop. And in fact, there were several colonies where farmers were required to grow hemp, which is amazing, you know, considering the sort of more recent history and how it's been sort of sidelined.
Welcome to episode 37 of the Crownsman podcast. Today, I am Jared Downey. I forgot to do my intro. I'm Jared Downey.
Tomorrow, who will you be?
Today, that's who he
Today.
is. Maybe tomorrow you can be Gowdy and I can be Jared.
I don't think I could pull it off. My co-host is Gowdy Molina.
Hello.
In studio today as our guest is Ola Lessard. Ola is the VP of Marketing and Communications for Barleans. Barleans is a board member of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable. So, I probably gave away, we're going to be discussing hemp today. A little bit about the history of hemp, where it is, the Farm Act. This is primarily going to be a show about the U.S., the United States side of the hemp industry. But it's going to be very interesting because hemp has a very long history in the United States. So we're going to get to unpackage it. It's going to be lots of fun. Before we do that, we got to talk about our sponsors. I'm putting weird sentences together. I don't know what. Maybe I'm just excited for the show.
I think let's go with excitement.
Let's go with excitement.
Okay, yes. We would like to thank all our sponsors. First up, we've got Formation Ag. If you're a large-scale CBD hemp farmer, you have a choice when it comes to harvesting your expensive hemp crop. You can try to update existing machinery to keep it from wrapping on every nut-bearing and auger, not to mention destroying the trichomes. Or you can buy equipment that was specifically engineered to handle all cultivars of CBD hemp while maintaining the integrity of your crop. Clean-cut harvesters from Formation Ag are designed from the ground up to help you get the most of your CBD crop. And you can find all the information at formationag.com, or you can call them, and I'll put the phone number on the link or here below. And you can visit them, Formation Ag, tomorrow's large-scale hemp solutions today. We've also got Savannah equipment. If you need everything from pumps to jaw crushers to conveyors, you can visit the leader in mining equipment, Savannah Equipment, where you will find more equipment every day. And you can visit them at savannahequipment.com. All right.
Okay. So, Ola, welcome to the show.
Thanks you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, driving all the way in from, where are you based out of?
We're in Ferndale, Washington.
Ferndale, Washington.
Yeah, not too far.
Yeah, not too bad. You got across the border okay?
I did. It took a little while, 20 minutes. I consider that not bad.
The Canadian side coming to Canada is apparently known as the less friendly side coming in, and which in my experience is true. But maybe it's because I'm Canadian. Maybe they're harder on me. I don't know.
Maybe they are. It's usually faster coming in to Canada for me than going back.
Oh, so they do just reverse it depending on. Okay, I got you. Okay, I want to kick off. I mean, we're going to unpack the U.S. Hemp Roundtable. We're going to talk a little bit about Barleans. We've got a lot to cover. Yeah. But the story of hemp in the United States is, I mean, it's actually fascinating, sort of the ride it's taken. Where would you start if you were going to kind of start that history?
Well, I'm going to not be that American that has to talk just about us for a second and say, actually, I'm going to take you back 10,000 years because that's how long people around the world have been cultivating hemp. So, hemp is just an amazing crop, and it was cultivated by ancient civilizations literally 10,000 years ago. So it's got a much longer history than the U.S. history. It's used for just a number of things. And I would say today, there are an estimated like 20,000 to 50,000 different products that are made from hemp.
Wow.
Everything from textiles and insulation and rope, paper, animal bedding, fiberboard. We're using it for green building products nowadays. Non-dairy alternatives, hemp milk. I mean, I'm a big fan of like a hemp milk mocha.
I have never tried that.
Oh, it's actually pretty good. Yeah, I like it more than coconut milk. So you gotta, then of course CBD is the one that's making all the news these days. But it's just a product that's been around for a very long time, and there's just innovation happening everywhere with hemp. And since the 1700s in the U.S. Back then it was a very, very important crop. And in fact, there were several colonies where farmers were required to grow hemp, which is amazing, considering the sort of more recent history and how it's been sort of sidelined. But it actually was just such an important crop in the U.S. at that time, in the beginning of our country, where it was often required to grow.
Wow.
And so, for the vast majority of American history, hemp was just something that was part of the landscape of manufacturing. Again, rope was hemp, and textiles were hemp, and paper. It's an amazing paper production crop. And then in 1937, that kind of all changed. So Congress passed something called the Marijuana Tax Act, and basically you had to be issued a tax stamp to grow and process hemp. It kind of got lumped in with marijuana at that point, and it really kind of shut down production in a large way because not everybody could get the stamp.
Right.
And so that was kind of the first blow to hemp in the U.S. And then if you fast forward to the 1970s, under the Nixon administration, things really kind of took a dive at that point.
That's just the war on drugs, sort of.
War on drugs, yeah. And there was a law called the Comprehensive Drug Abuse Prevention Control Act. It's quite a mouthful, but essentially what it did was it made cultivation of any cannabis product, whether marijuana or hemp, illegal. It made marijuana a Schedule I drug, and the way they defined marijuana, it kind of pulled hemp into it didn't clarify the differences between these two plants. So really, hemp got lumped in at that point and became illegal. I mean, when I say Schedule I drug, what that means in the U.S., I mean, that's heroin, LSD. I mean, these are really hardcore drugs, and so a lot of people, I've looked at that for an awfully long time saying, that's just crazy that it was. But there were a lot of political things that sort of led up to that, I think, and that's what happened to hemp, and it sat there for a very long time. The weird thing was that even though hemp became illegal to grow or process or manufacture things from in the U.S., we continued to import products from other countries that were hemp products. So
hemp-based products.
Hemp-based products, so we were able to bring things in from other places, but not let our own farmers grow this incredible crop. So that was kind of an interesting little, part of history. And then, things kind of sat like that for decades. And in 2001, hemp kind of dodged a bullet where the DEA tried to make all hemp things illegal. So even hemp seeds and hemp seed oil. And an organization, a wonderful organization called the Hemp Industries Association, and some hemp product manufacturers fought back. And they sort of managed to not have that pass because that just would have shut down even culinary uses of hemp seed oil and products. So that was kind of a close call. And then I would just fast forward to 2014 was sort of the first big good news that started happening was President Obama passed the 2014 Farm Bill. And the Farm Bill in the U.S. is just a huge piece of legislation. It covers all of our agricultural subsidies and just a ton of stuff relating to agriculture. And of course, agriculture is really important in the U.S., as it is in most countries. And that law allowed states to set up hemp pilot programs. And then you were allowed to start growing hemp, for research and even marketing it, as long as you were working with one of these state hemp pilot programs. So it was sort of, there was a small window where people started to be allowed to grow hemp and produce hemp products, and kind of the door was cracking open a little bit. And I'd say that's when CBD in particular really started to come onto the scene, and people realized, ooh, okay, things are moving forward, and so companies started producing things like CBD. And it was a little, there was a lot of gray at that time as to whether that was really okay.
Right.
But, people plowed forward and started working. And then one big highlight, 2017, was the U.S. Hemp Roundtable was formed and came together, and as a coalition of organizations from the hemp industry, everything from, all along the supply chain, from seed to, final product. And a number of companies came together and said, look, we want to work together to really move forward legislation. We want to move forward bipartisan legislation that federally will say that hemp and hemp-derived products are legal. And so, this group of competitors came together. It's grown. I mean, the organization has grown tremendously, and I know we're going to talk about it a little bit more later. But it was sort of everybody getting together behind a common goal of saying we can only move this forward if we work together, if we recognize that ensuring safety, consumer safety, is important, and we all agree on that as an important goal. And so the U.S. Hemp Roundtable has been sort of the legislative lobbying arm, if you will. We're the nice lobbyists. Lobbying has a dirty, connotation, I know, but obviously everybody lobbies, whether, no matter what side of any thing you're on. And
Yeah.
so we as an organization have been really pushing, at the federal level and then more recently at the state level to kind of move legislation along. And then 2018, big year for hemp. And so the Farm Bill is every 4 years in the U.S.
Yeah.
And so there was another Farm Bill in 2018, and that passed in December of 2018. And part of the language that was in that Farm Bill was clarifying that hemp could be legal, and that passed and was signed into law. And that did some really important things. It permanently removed hemp from the Controlled Substances Act. It made it very clear that hemp and marijuana are different. It defined hemp as being, cannabis with less or 0.3% THC or less. So you couldn't have above that and be legal hemp. It made it so the hemp was no longer confused with marijuana from a legislative or legal standpoint.
Yeah.
It does allow, the Farm Bill still allows that states in the U.S. are allowed to make their own laws. So even though we have federal clarity on sort of the drug side, the DEA side, it's saying federally we recognize that this is not a controlled substance, but a state could do its own thing. And some states have. But part of that, so even though states can make their own laws and you can have a state that says we don't allow hemp products, those states are not allowed to interfere with interstate commerce, which is huge.
So across shipping across and
so
things like
if
that.
I'm, Texas and I say no CBD or no hemp products or whatever, the state of Texas still can't stop a truck that's trying to go through to deliver to another location. So that's really important from a commerce standpoint, of course.
Right. Yeah.
But it's not over, and we're still working. And this week here in September, we're in the middle of the Safe Banking Act, which will provide safe harbor for banks to do business with cannabis companies, including hemp companies.
How does that work?
So, essentially, that law it's called the Safe Banking Act, and it actually last week passed through the U.S. Congress, the House, and still has to go to the Senate, and then it would be signed by the president after that. But basically, banks are nervous, understandably, to work with companies that are cannabis growers, whether it's hemp or marijuana. And this law actually sort of covers both of them, but looks at, hemp in a specific way and makes it so that if you're a bank, for example, that you have a business that's selling hemp or hemp-derived product like CBD,
right,
that you would know that you'd be okay. So if you sort of get audited, you don't have to worry about the federal government coming after you because you're doing business in the cannabis space. And that's what the Safe Banking Act is intended to do, and we're really hopeful that it will pass through all the way and make it where companies that are trying to sell legal, safe products have banks that'll work with them.
Yeah.
It's been an issue for like online sales and and companies.
Oh, because you're trying to do these transactions.
You're trying to sell to stores. You're trying to sell online. You're trying to do all these things, and if you can't find a bank that's willing to take a chance on you, it's not, your business can't go too far.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is a really important piece of legislation for the industry.
And from the U.S. Hemp Roundtable comes sort of spun off from that is the U.S. Hemp Authority. Is that right?
Yes.
And so so their sort of role is to provide regulation and sort of approval to make sure that these companies are working within guidelines and safely and all that sort of thing, so that people like the banks and that are able to work. Is that kind of what that role is?
Kind of, not regulation. So they're a certifying body.
Oh,
they're an independent certifying body. So they're not a regulatory agency or anything like that. So the U.S. Hemp Authority, again, was spun off out as sort of a sister organization to the Hemp Roundtable, recognizing that, the Hemp Roundtable's job is to sort of move legislation forward and work with states and the federal government to sort of help them understand hemp and what it's all about and get behind clarity around legislative issues. The U.S. Hemp Authority is an organization that, again, all of these members of the Roundtable, we all want the same thing. We all want to be able to legally sell products that are made properly, that are safe, that are legal, particularly with CBD. I mean, there's just a lot of money in this industry right now. And so a lot of people rush in when that happens with any product. And, when that happens, you get disreputable companies too.
Of course, yeah.
So you have companies like Barleans. We've been around for 30 years. We have a quality, our whole reputation is based on trust and quality. But, enter a booming market that's, estimated to be billions of dollars, and you're going to get people that are just jumping in there for the money. And if they do things wrong and they get caught, no big deal. They close up shop, they pop up under another name somewhere else, So the sort of reputable companies that are involved, and I should say the companies that are members of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, they're vetted by the organization. Nobody can just jump in and become a member. It's not just paying your dues and you're in. You have to be vetted and make sure that you're a company that is doing things right and not making claims you shouldn't make and so forth. But then they also realize, like, how do consumers know which company is okay? Like, if you've never heard of Barleans, or you've never heard of some of the other great companies that are doing things well, how do you know this product from that product? How do you know that this one's made with, good manufacturing practices and that it's safe and that it's legal and it's testing its products appropriately with third-party independent testing? So the U.S. Hemp Authority was set up to become a certifying body where they heavily vet. I mean, the paperwork is this thick to apply, and, submit all your thing. And they look at everything from, your sourcing up through your manufacturing practices. And then they also send in an independent third-party auditor to your facility to audit your facility for manufacturing processes.
Okay.
So, you have to pass all of that. That independent third-party auditor gets back to the U.S. Hemp Authority and says, yep, they're good. And then only then can you use the U.S. Hemp Authority seal, which then you can put on your packaging and your website and so on. And it's just really a signal for consumers to say, this product, has been vetted. It's been audited to be safe and legal and manufactured properly and safely, which is really important.
Yeah, it's sort of, and it's one of these things you just sort of look at an industry and you wonder, well, how are they going to do it? So something like the U.S. Hemp Authority can actually provide that. I was curious, going back to the lobbyists. You said, we're the good guys.
It's always, everyone's the good guy.
Everyone's the
side,
good guy. We cover so many industries on the show, and the way I look at lobbyists, obviously that you've got a vested interest because there's companies behind that are trying to make money, but also it provides experts in the industry to say, this is what we're dealing with, this is how it needs to be approached, this is how we succeed, which, if it's done correctly, can build everybody up. And I was wondering, as a lobbyist group, because personally I've never been a part of one, how does that work in the U.S.? Are you actually providing pieces of recommended legislation? Like, do you have lawyers that actually write it up and say, we'd like to insert this into the farm bill? Or do they say, we're going to do something? Like, how does that conversation happen?
Well, I think it's a little both. I mean, I will not suggest that we tell any U.S. senator or congressperson what to do, for sure. But yes, I mean, we provide expertise. We provide that education and explanation as to, what the real story is. Again, there's a lot of confusion. I mean, even now with hemp versus marijuana. And you have, I think one of the most interesting parts of this journey with hemp in more recent history is a number of very conservative states getting on board behind hemp, which surprises people.
And I've been following it from just very much from a distance here in Canada. But yes, and that's one of the things that even off screen, I said, was there a surprise that this was passed with, and then you sort of unpackage the Farm Bill, being that the Farm Bill happens every 4 years, so it has to get passed.
Yeah.
But it was passed with
this language
with
in it.
Essentially a conservative government with this language in it. And which there must be a certain amount of support from primarily conservative states. And you sort of had an interesting explanation as to why that is. Yeah,
I mean, to me, I think, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, a lot of the, Mitch McConnell, who's obviously very conservative leader, House leader for the Republican Party, has been a huge advocate for hemp. And I think that surprises a lot of people initially. And initially, I think it surprised Mitch McConnell probably because, like most people, cannabis and marijuana were sort of interchangeable terms, right? And hemp is part of the cannabis family. So, I mean, I think like many people, he was probably initially quite opposed to hemp until, he had a chance to learn a little bit about it and realize, okay, this is not the stuff that gets you high.
It's like the distant cousin that lives on the other side of the country, kind of.
Yeah, we kind of say, it's like lemons and oranges. They're both citrus fruits, right? I mean, it's really, they have a lot of similarities for sure, but they also have some really distinct differences or different breeds of dogs. They're all canines, but your Mastiff and your your adorable little Shih Tzu or with butter or whatever.
That snuggled up beside you on
the
the
snuggle up
on
dog
the
that
meeting couch. Yeah.
I want her here on my lap right now. But I mean, you have all these different breeds of dogs, and they're bred for different things, right? So they have genetic differences,
Yeah.
but they're all part of the canine family. And I think those are really good comparisons to hemp and marijuana. They're cousins. They're part of the same plant family, but they are cousins, and they have some very distinct differences. The biggest of which is the fact that hemp has, 0.3% or less THC. THC being, what gets you high in marijuana.
Right.
Whereas marijuana can have upwards of 20% or more THC. So there's a really big difference in that regard. So hemp cannot get you high, and if anybody thinks it can, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but it's
You'll
not
be
gonna
smoking
happen.
for a while.
You're going to be a very long time. It's just not going to work. So, so you have this crop that is this amazing crop. And you have in the U.S., and I don't know if it's the same in Canada, but I mean, family farmers in particular have been really hard hit for decades.
Yeah.
And it's hard to farm. It's hard work, as you know, and it doesn't always pay the bills very well. And so, particularly in our big agricultural states, we have this sort of farming crisis in a lot of communities where, young people don't necessarily want to take over the family farm. Family farms are going under, daily pretty much. Often getting bought out and developed or packaged as part of huge ag business, and it's really sad, and it's a pity. But here you have this crop that people want to buy. It grows really well. It doesn't require all these pesticides and herbicides that so many crops are using, which is really bad for farmers' health and their families' health. It's a sustainable crop. I mean, you can grow it several times. It's a great rotation. I mean, it's just this phenomenal crop, which there's a huge market for. So I think it makes a lot of sense when you look at it like that and you think, our states where things like tobacco grew, but even other states. I mean, Maine. I mean, this is also a crop that grows in a lot of different geographic locations. So it's this amazing agricultural crop. So when you have these conservative states, many of them are agricultural states. So once they understand the difference between marijuana and hemp, they realize, like, wow, here's an amazing opportunity for our agricultural community, and it's not this drug that we're worried about.
Yeah, it's not, you're not asking a conservative, traditionally conservative state to switch over everything and start supporting drug use.
Right,
Like, that's
exactly, yeah. But it takes that education, and I think
Right.
that's where the Roundtable steps in and has done an amazing job. Long before Barleans joined the Roundtable, we were not one of the initial members. But, they did a great job of sort of identifying some of these folks and states and saying, can we educate you a little bit and help you understand why actually we think if you listen, you're really going to be behind this. And that's what happened. And they did an absolutely incredible job of doing that, which got people on board that had a great voice that could help move this through, that were trusted, that weren't, nobody was going to look at Mitch McConnell and think he was supporting drug use. It just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
So, and there are a number of other states where people got on board and really pushed through. Oregon. I mean, just a bunch of states around the country that, have a very big interest in agriculture and supporting that, who helped move all this legislation forward.
It is amazing, though. I mean, it's great news for the industry. It's also amazing, though, how long it took, to take I think 30, you said 37, that an industry just got taken away, that a state that was mandatory to grow hemp all of a sudden went, you're growing drugs.
Yeah.
And it's a strange sort of thing. But I know, it's the same here in Canada. There's also the forestry industry, and there's pharmacy, and there's so many different factors that come in to these legislation and pressure and voting. And so it just, you can see it when you're kind of looking back from it, but it's still amazing just from a practical that a plant that has so many uses is going.
It's just gone.
Can't be grown for almost 100 years. 37. That's, I mean, we're coming up on 100 years.
It's incredible,
it's pretty
right?
amazing.
Yeah.
So, let's switch over into the. I want to talk a little bit more about Barleans and your professional career and everything. And we're gonna switch over and thank a couple more sponsors.
Yeah. First off, I will just do a little quick mention about our Crownsman specials that just recently we rolled out. We've had 2 Crownsman specials, so check those out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see them. We had Savannah Equipment come on and DRA Global. So if you're looking to promote your own services, projects, please let us know, info@crownsman.com, or visit our website, crownsman.com. Okay, moving on. We've also like to thank Data Cloud and for being a sponsor. Does it feel like you're drilling and blasting blind? Could your MWD measurements be better? The Data Cloud platform shows your lithology changes in real time for better blasting and fragmentation profiles. Check out their IoT sensors and cloud computing platform at datacloud.com and learn how you can know your rock today. We also have got Streamline. They offer a complete package of fleet management solutions with 3 incredible products: NaviStream, their onboard intelligence and telematics system; NaviLink, their vehicle automation and IoT platform; and Dagama, their dynamic transportation management system. And you can visit them at stti.com for the Streamline advantage. One more.
There's one more. Who?
There's one more.
Who?
One more. We also have got, again, Formation Ag.
Oh, right.
There are 25,000 uses for the industrial hemp plant, and most of those come from the hurd and the fiber. Textiles, rope, paper, hempcrete, animal bedding, plastics, and composite material are just a few. But before any of those can be made, the hemp stalks have to be decorticated. The process of separating the fiber from the hurd. The Fiber Track 660 decorticator from Formation Ag produces high-quality first mill fiber and hurd at a rate of up to a ton per hour. And you can see it today at formationag.com, or you can give them a call in the in the phone number below. So Formation Ag, tomorrow's large hemp solutions today. All right, that was a lot.
They have the most specific ad I think I've ever heard. It's actually quite helpful.
Yeah,
I actually get what they're talking about. And I also noticed we're matching today.
Oh, I hadn't noticed
you
that.
guys forgot to tell me.
This
I
is
feel
not on
left out.
purpose.
Thanks a lot.
I hadn't even noticed that.
Great host for setting up.
Okay, so now it's my turn. And I wanted to know a little bit more about you. I kind of went on LinkedIn, and you've done quite a bit of, you've worked for many different companies and done a little bit of everything, I guess. So can you tell me where you started off first?
Oh, boy. Started, how far back are we going, Gowdy?
Up to you.
Well, all right. So we'll skip some of the colorful parts. No, I mean, I guess I started my professional career actually working in D.C. I worked in disability civil rights shortly after the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed.
Right.
So that was kind of an interesting segment of my life, and I worked in that field for many years, probably 7 or 8 years. And I think my favorite claim to fame there, at the time, I didn't have a last name, which is just one of those weird little facts about me. And I once was at a cocktail party and met a woman who was a scheduler for the White House. We used to have meetings at the White House, of course. And I was like, "Oh, hi, I'm Ola." And she said, "Ola? What's your last name?" And I said, "Well, I don't have one." And she called this other woman over there. She's like, "This is Ola." And she was the person who was to vet guests for the White House. And she's like, "It's Ola." Because every time a guest list would come through, they'd be like, "Who is this woman with one name?"
With one name.
So I worked in that field for quite a long time, and then met my husband, and I grew up in New England. Ended up moving back to New England when I met him, because he was living in New England, and soon, I had worked sort of in PR and other things in disability civil rights, and kind of went out and worked for a PR agency for a while, and then decided to have a family and went out on my own as a consultant, because I didn't want to be full-time, but I didn't want to not work at all. So I started my own PR firm and worked pretty close to 15 years doing that, working with a bunch of different people. I actually started in building products, which is just sort of a personal passion of mine. I enjoy building products, and slowly kind of migrated into some other stuff, and ended up doing a fair amount of work in sort of the organic foods and natural products industry.
Wow.
And worked with some of the bigger names in that industry, including Stonyfield Organic Yogurt was one of my big clients, and they were wonderful, and they're extremely passionate about farmer issues. So it really was like a great segue into kind of the bigger side of the natural products industry, which is so supportive of farming and independent farming and all that stuff that is really sort of the backbone of these products in this industry. And I moved across the country to Washington State to work with Barleans because they're just, it's one of those opportunities that came across and they found me, and I think I was ready for a change and kind of the next step. And so moved with my family over, and it was just a really tempting place to work. I mean, it's this incredible company that has this incredible reputation for, as I said, quality and trust, and it's also a really philanthropic company, and it's one of these companies that doesn't talk a ton about the philanthropy and the charitable work that we do. The company is owned by the Barlean family still after 30 years, and they're, they have always been, it kind of kills me as the marketing person to not talk about it a little bit more. And it's not that they're opposed, but they're really sensitive to not ever wanting it to make it seem like the things that they do only to get publicity. So we are very involved with, we supported the inoculation of, I think, 3.5 million kids with vitamin A last year around the world, and that's a leading cause of childhood blindness. So a small vitamin A supplement twice a year can prevent childhood blindness for kids. Wow. And so I think we supported 7 million doses of vitamin A around the world. We work with Compassion International, doing a bunch of stuff. We work with, and then locally with, we support a lot of anti-human trafficking kind of stuff. There's a local organization near us called Engedi Refuge, and they support women that are trying to flee from sex trafficking or human trafficking situations, and kind of support them, and they house them and kind of help them get back on their feet and get out into the world and be able to kind of reestablish in a different way. And we work a lot with our food banks. I mean, we donated, I think, one of the things we make is coconut oil. We're a healthy oils company. Yeah. And I think last year we donated, I can't remember, like 10,000 jars of coconut oil or some crazy amount to our local food banks. I mean, so it's just it's a really cool company to work for, and it's one of those companies you can feel really good about supporting every day.
Yeah. Wow. No, you've definitely gone from one, well, I guess not from one extreme to the next, but it's kind of gradually you've managed to work yourself into the agriculture and that. And so, but from where you started to now, what is a big difference that you see, not just in your life, but overall?
I think just largely people, I mean, I grew up with this very organic mom. My mother actually started a natural foods co-op in Massachusetts, in the late 60s when she moved there. And, people were kind of eating TV dinners. And, I think she looked around and she was like, what are people eating? So she started this natural foods co-op and would literally drive into Boston and pick up, sacks of whole grains and oats and, dried fruit and stuff. And then she and other women would kind of come together in the kitchen, and they'd, you had 5 pounds of dried apricots and you had, 3 pounds of oats or whatever it was. And so we grew up being like the weird kids that, had carob chip cookies, Tiger's milkshakes, and, ate dried fruit instead of, Hostess cupcakes in our lunchbox. Wasn't always easy, but I gotta say we're all pretty healthy. So, I think, but it was just, that was really odd then. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And just, obviously that was when I was very young, but even, kind of getting into sort of working with clients like Stonyfield, 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was still kind of a subset of people who kind of got organic or natural products and were really focused on why they may be important and why you want sustainability and why you want to think about pesticide use and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's really becoming much more prevalent and widespread. People are looking at what's in their food. Young people, millennials, are super focused on, not just what's in my food, but where did it come from? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's an expectation that a company will tell you. And I think that is probably the biggest difference, is that because of social media, consumers in general don't want to be talked at by companies any longer. They want to have a conversation. Right. They want to be able to ask questions and get an answer. Yeah. So as a marketing person, that's a huge shift over the last 20, 25 years that I've worked in marketing. It's no longer blah, 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 we're going to tell you why we're great. It's, oh, you're going to ask me questions and you expect an answer and you expect it like now. Yeah. So we have to be much more open and transparent to meet that expectation, and our consumers are really educated, and that's a great thing. Yeah. I mean, it's challenging as a marketer, but it's a great thing. And it translates into all these industries, and I think, where we have entered CBD, that expectation is there. I mean, it's absolutely an expectation, and it's a good one that consumers have, that they can go on our website and pull up the exact third-party independent testing for, you know, the bottle they're holding in the store before they buy it. They want to be able to get on their phone and go, lot number such and such. Oh, okay, yep, doesn't have too much THC, has the amount of CBD they said, doesn't have heavy metals, doesn't, you know what I mean? That is an expectation, and we all have to meet that now as companies.
Yeah. Do you think that for hemp, that expectation is higher than anything else?
I don't know for anything else, but I think it's really high. Yeah, and I think the reason is because of the confusion with marijuana. You know, we have to take that extra step as a manufacturer to make sure people really feel comfortable, because you have to remember people, you know, again, especially with CBD, we're getting people who may have never walked into a natural health market before that are asking about CBD, that are looking for CBD because it's in, you know, Forbes, and it's in the New York Times, and it's in all of these publications that are really mainstream, that aren't, you know, publications or news sources that are about health foods. So now everybody's hearing about CBD. They're hearing about, you know, it could be this, and you might use it for that, and, you know, all that stuff. And as manufacturers, we're not really allowed to talk about those things, but people get all that through their news outlets and through their friends and their conversations, you know, on the playground and at the soccer field and everywhere else. And you have, you know, just a really wide range of people that are coming in looking for these products. But a lot of them, you know, for example, are seniors. And they kind of grew up in an era where it was like, oh, marijuana's like, you know, I had, you know, my mom's partner, he said, you know, Ola, you have to understand, like, when I was growing up, like, the way marijuana was, you know, the way people talk to me about marijuana is if you take one hit of a joint, like, you're going to be a drug addict tomorrow. You're going to be on the street, you know. So he was just so scared.
Eat margarine.
You know, so, you know what I mean? But that's really common, where people, you know, have these, you know, regardless how they feel about marijuana, if they confuse marijuana and hemp, you had to start with this really big conversation and education. You know, here's the difference. Here's why one is not the other. And you can feel however you want about marijuana, but let's talk about hemp and hemp-derived CBD and why that's safe and why you're not going to get high and why it's not a drug and all this stuff. So, yeah, I think the onus is on us as manufacturers to do that education. I mean, I know with Barleans, it's been a huge part of, you know, instead of traditional marketing, we're educating. We're doing webinars. We have a webinar on the history of hemp, so people can kind of learn about that. We have webinars on, you know, what athletes are using CBD for, and you know, how it works in your body, and what the endocannabinoid system is, and all this stuff that people hadn't necessarily heard of. But people want reassurance. They want to understand. They want to be educated, and they want to know, you know, if I'm going to take these products, like, who do I trust, and what questions should I ask, and how do I go into a store or go online and buy something and know what it is. And that it's okay.
Exactly.
I think it kind of goes back to, like, when we've said it many times on the show, when we started the show, so much of what we heard in multiple industries was, oh, people's short attention spans. So we started off releasing short content, and then as soon as we switched over to long content, then everybody started flooding because that is what they want. I mean, we have the metrics for even this show, and it's not, people will watch this show about hemp. They'll watch it from the mining industry. We see what their primary interests are online. And they're watching for, you know, 14, 15 minutes at a time. That's the average person.
Wow, that's great.
And it's not because of what we are doing, other than the fact that we're just having a more in-depth conversation than a 30-second clip. That is all it is just people want the Farm Bill. Before today, I thought that a new bill got added that pulled hemp into a type of farm legislation. I didn't realize it was a farm bill that the hemp was dropped into. And that difference is actually quite important when you're trying to understand, even from people that are investing in the industry and things like that. They need to have that understanding. And you can't get that from a 30-second clip.
No, you definitely cannot. No, and I think that's, you know, to your point, I mean, that's why shows like this are so important, really, because, you know, we all have short attention spans to a certain degree, but when it's something that we care about, and, you know, again, I think by and large, people are becoming increasingly concerned with and understanding the importance of what is in my food, what is in my supplements, what is in this thing. You know, I hear people talking about it over here, but is that, you know, but is that true? I mean, how do I know that that's accurate and that what this person, this expert is saying is real? So I think this is a good example of an industry where we've all tried to step up and say, as a reputable company, if I'm not educating you and providing you with real transparency and clarity around what I'm trying to sell you in this bottle, then you should probably look elsewhere and look for another bottle. And I want to just say, I think there are many. It's a little easier for Barleans. We've been an oil and supplement company for 30 years. So for us, understanding how to make a label and do it right, that's something we do for flax oil, for fish oil, all the other products that we make. And there's some amazing small companies coming up, and they may not get it right on their label the first time. It doesn't mean that they're not great small companies. Barleans was a tiny company once. Bruce Barleen used to sleep in his car or next to his flax press, because he was, pretty much homeless when he started the company, because he just put it all into this company and literally didn't have a place to live. So he lived in his car for a while. Every company starts somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So we, as a legacy brand, I think it's really important to be supportive of all of smaller companies that are trying to do it right. And I think that is one of the things that's so wonderful about the Hemp Roundtable. Is that you don't have to be a big company to join. Small companies can join up, and in doing so, we're all supporting one another.
Yeah.
And we're learning from one another. There's so many things I've learned from just my interactions with people in different companies that are my competitors, and they're wonderful people. It's a great group of people and companies that are there because we all start from the standpoint of we want to be doing things right, safely, legally, etc. So it's a great way for smaller companies to also kind of learn and move up and build those connections that can help them grow into the industry too.
I think it's so important for industries or for especially small companies to understand. I think the easiest example that anybody can see is when you drive by and you see 5 car dealerships all side by side.
Right.
It's because then people go there, and you might lose the one sale, but you'll get the next one because it's bringing people together to that one. It raises the whole industry across the board.
Yeah.
And I think again, I'm sure there's lots of small business people that watch this show, and to understand that need for partnership and that to move something forward it's so key. You can't do it without it because and I'm sure you've seen it. You're a member of a group. You then can turn around and use that knowledge to then redistribute it back to your customers and your clients, and it's just so important. These members, what's the range? Who's a part of it?
So really everybody along the supply chain. So I will say everything from, people that are doing seed all the way up to people who are bottling CBD. And the heavy end of that is the bottling, CBD and selling CBD. For sure. That is kind of the booming space. But I want to be clear that there are just so many other hemp products out there that, we make CBD. We don't make other hemp products, but they're a hugely important part of the industry. And I think it's really important to draw attention to some of those other products as well because, my daughter has a bird. His absolute favorite treat in the world is hemp hearts. Bird will do anything for hemp hearts.
What kind of bird?
He's a green-cheeked conure, so it's a very small member of the parrot family.
Oh, cool.
Pip is his name. But, but that's, you have all these hemp seed products and culinary hemp seed oil, and you have flour, and again, the textiles. Beautiful clothing that's being made with hemp, and green building. Hempcrete. There's just all of this innovation that now that we're saying, okay, you don't have to worry as much about hemp in terms of the legalities. Just think of the explosion of innovation that's going to be allowed to happen now.
Yeah.
So, CBD pushed forward sort of as the leader of the pack, maybe because, it just came with more money, I guess. You know what I mean? Because it's, you have a small product that's, relatively expensive. It's expensive to make and, has, a little bit of higher price tag, and it got all the attention. So people kind of flock to it. But I think it's going to be really exciting to see over the next, few years and decades, all the other places that hemp-derived products are going to just explode onto the scene, and the innovation that's going to happen, and all the other areas of industry where hemp is going to come back to playing a big role in America, as it did previously.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, we had Formation Ag when they were on the show, and that's what they talked a lot about was that the infrastructure, because of course you wouldn't invest in something that's not legal, especially these major companies. They're just not going to, all that R&D budget, they're not going to use that. So now all of a sudden there's an opportunity to go, okay, yes, there's clothing made of hemp, but it's not at a large scale.
Right.
So now these companies can start to look at investing that are experts in manufacturing
Yeah.
textiles and things like that. They can start to look, because what they explained to us, and you probably know better than me, but that it is a different type of product. It's a different type of fiber. It's not a wood product.
Right.
It is
Yeah.
different, so they need specific equipment that's designed for it.
Yep.
I can't even imagine what we're going to see in the next 20 years.
Oh, it's going to be
as-
really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's, and I honestly, I think one of the areas that's really interesting is sort of the green building.
Mhm.
Again, you have this
Yeah.
crop that is so sustainable. It's, you know, it's a rotation crop. I mean, it grows, you know, in certain climates you can grow several crops in a year. Grows super fast, clean. Again, not all the chemicals that, frankly, are killing our farmers. You
Yeah.
know, with a lot of the other crops that they're growing, and here you can make building products out of it. I mean, that's
Yeah, it's going to be amazing.
nothing against the timber industry, because I think they've done a lot to really, you know, be more sustainable in recent decades. But, you know, this is a plant that grows really, really quickly. We saw what happened with bamboo, and people kind of, you know, in you know, the U.S. and Canada and this part of the world, where people kind of realize, like, oh, bamboo,
Yeah.
wow, it's, you know, grows really fast and it's really strong, and we can make floors out of it and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I have a feeling we're going to see that kind of thing, and probably even much larger, because I think hemp has just a greater diversity of products that
Yeah.
that it's capable of producing.
Yeah, it certainly will not be our last show on. And you know, as we wrap up, just I want to thank you for coming. I mean,
Thank
coming
you.
all the way, like many of our guests, you hadn't met us, and coming all the way here into our studio to do the show, we really do appreciate it. So
Oh,
I hope your experience was good.
Oh, it was great. It's a pleasure, and thanks for having me.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very
thanks
much,
so
Ola.
much, Gowdy.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to wrap up over here.
Yes.
Thank you for watching. We will put links and everything to Barleans, the U.S. Hemp Roundtable,
Yeah.
U.S. Hemp Authority. We'll put all links in that. So, I mean, there's a lot more information, of course, than we're able to cover on the show. And where can people follow us, Gowdy?
All right. So you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out all our episodes there and our Crownsman specials. We've got an episode every week, sometimes 2 a week. Yeah. So you can also listen to us on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Breaker, Castbox. I think I got everything.
No way. There's more.
Probably. But yeah,
And the
definitely.
Facebook group. Yep,
Yes.
that's I think we're talking about doing some more giveaways in that group as well. So that's just the Crownsman podcast. You can find it. That's sort of an open forum. That's the fun version of
Yeah,
everything.
definitely. With lots of conversations, open to any questions, comments, and you know, something you don't agree with, that's fine too.
So we never cover things if people don't agree. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. We love bringing the show. Please give us our feedback. If you want to be, someone who wants to be a guest, please reach out to us. We're happy to talk to anybody. And we will see you on the next episode.